We're all looking for a way to be more successful, right? But it always feels so complicated, like this big, unsolvable mystery. Well, today we're going to look at a surprisingly simple but incredibly powerful blueprint from a guy who achieves success on a scale that's just almost hard to believe. Of course, I'm talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So, what is the secret? I mean, how does a kid from a tiny village in post-war Austria become a global superstar in not one, not two, but three completely different fields? It turns out the answer is actually pretty straightforward. It comes down to a few core rules that really any of us can use. So let's dive in and break down his blueprint for success.
All right, so we're going to break his whole philosophy down into just two fundamental rules. And these aren't some vague motivational poster ideas, okay? These are the real, actionable principles he used to absolutely conquer bodybuilding, then Hollywood, and even politics. Okay, let's get right into it. Rule number 1. This is the big one, the foundation for everything else that came after. You have to have a clear vision. I mean, think about it. Without a goal, you're just kind of floating around, right? Adrift. Arnold was absolutely convinced that knowing exactly where you want to end up is the most important first step you can take. It's the difference between moving with purpose and just, moving. And his own story is the perfect example of this. Growing up in Austria, he always had this feeling, that he was born for something special, but he had no idea what that something was. And then one day, he sees this school documentary about America, the huge skyscrapers, the endless freeways, and boom. That was the spark. He just thought, that's it. That's where I need to be. But America is still pretty vague, right? It's a big place. The real breakthrough, the aha moment, came when he stumbled upon a bodybuilding magazine. And on the cover was this guy, Reg Park, a 3-time Mr. Universe. And the article explained how Park used his championship body to get into movies and become a star. For Arnold, it was like a lightning bolt. He just found the literal blueprint for his entire life. And just like that, his vision became crystal clear. It wasn't just some fuzzy dream anymore. Nope. It was a concrete 3-step plan. Step 1, become a bodybuilding champ, just like Reg Park. Step 2, use that to get into the movies, just like Reg Park. And step 3, get rich and famous. You guessed it, just like Reg Park. All of a sudden, he had a map. See, that's the thing. Having a vision like that, it doesn't just give you a destination on a map. It completely changes your day-to-day life. It gives you this intense, powerful sense of purpose.
And this is where things get really interesting when you compare it to life today. There was a Gallup poll that found a staggering 74%, that's almost 3/4, of people in America hate their job. They're just unhappy. And Arnold would argue that this is exactly what happens when you're just drifting aimlessly, without that big, compelling vision pulling you forward.
Now contrast that with this. People would see Arnold in the gym grinding it out for 5, sometimes 6 hours a day, and he'd have this huge smile on his face. They'd ask him, why? How are you so happy doing this? And his answer was so simple. He said every single rep, every single set, it wasn't a chore, it was a pleasure. Why? Because it was one step closer to his vision of becoming Mr. Universe. That vision turned all that grueling work into a joyful mission.
Okay, so you've got your vision, you're fired up, you're full of purpose. But then you run into the next big roadblock. And that brings us right to Arnold's second rule. What do you do with all the people who tell you your dream is impossible? And the rule itself sounds so simple. Don't listen to the naysayers. But how he actually applied it, that's what's so powerful. I mean, at every single stage of his career, Arnold was told, no, you can't do that. That's impossible. But his secret wasn't just to plug his ears and ignore them. No, he did something much smarter. He learned how to transform their negativity. He literally trained his brain to hear the exact opposite of what the doubters were saying. So when they said no, he heard yes. When they said that's impossible, he heard it is possible. For him, all that negativity wasn't a stop sign, it was fuel for the fire. It was just confirmation that he was on a path nobody had ever walked before. And you know what? That got him excited. So here's the really crucial part, how he actually put this into practice. It's brilliant. He took the very things that people criticized him for the most, the things everyone called his biggest weaknesses, his liabilities, and he flipped them. He turned them into his greatest strengths, his greatest assets. Okay, case in point number 1, his body. He gets to Hollywood and agents are telling him, your body is just too strange. You look like a monster.
But he didn't listen. And then along comes the movie Conan the Barbarian. The director, John Milius, famously said that Arnold's body was so perfect for the role that if he didn't exist, they would have had to build one. Bam! His biggest liability just became his golden ticket to stardom.
And then, of course, there was that accent. Everyone told him, "You'll never be a leading man with that stupid accent. Nobody can understand you." And then James Cameron casts him in The Terminator. And what did Cameron say later? He said that Arnold's kind of mechanical, slightly off way of talking was the very thing that made the character work. It made it iconic. So once again, what everyone saw as a huge liability became his most indispensable asset.
So what does this all boil down to? What's the big takeaway here? When you strip away all the details, Arnold's blueprint for achieving these massive, monumental goals is actually, well, it's incredibly simple. It really just comes down to these two things. Rule number 1, have a crystal clear vision of where you want to go, a vision so clear that it fires you up with purpose every single morning. And rule number 2, ignore the naysayers. Develop that mental toughness to not just ignore them, but to actually use their doubt as your fuel. And that really leaves us with a final question for you. Because look, it's easy to sit here and admire Arnold's story. It's incredible. But the real challenge is applying it to our own lives. So what's your blueprint? What's your clear, actionable vision? And maybe, just maybe, the most important question is, whose no are you going to turn into your yes?